Hey y'all, welcome to Tears and Joy in Your 20s. I'm your host, Julia Light, and I am so glad you're here. Navigating your 20s comes with a lot of highs and lows, a lot of freedom, and a lot of uncertainty. That's why I created a space for conversation about all of it. On this podcast, you'll hear interviews of creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing big things in their 20s, telling their story, tears and joy and all. I hope this helps you know you're not alone. There's so much to look forward to, and you can savor this season right in the messy middle.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited today to have one of my dearest friends, Lucy Benzinger. Hey, Lucy.
Hi, Jules.
I'm so glad you're here.
I am too. This is so fun.
I'm going to read Lucy's bio so y'all can hear a little bit about her. Lucy Benzinger is a Seattle-born musical theater performer based in New York City. She has worked professionally in theaters across the country and off-Broadway. She and her husband Chandler have a lifestyle YouTube channel where they capture their New York City life through life-giving and wholesome entertainment. Lucy is passionate about finding healthy life rhythms in order to sustain a creative life and career. Welcome to the show, Lucy.
Thanks, Jules. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. So, y'all, Lucy is in her mid to late 20s.
Yeah, I'm a millennial. I shouldn't be on this podcast.
I know. Well, I actually almost texted you back about that because I was like, sometimes we talk about being Gen Z, and she was like, I'm not Gen Z. But that book that I always talk about, The Anxious Generation,
yes,
he does say, like, born after 1995
100%
is a specific type of person.
Yeah.
Like, sociologically, because of when you got a phone and stuff.
Social media and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So even though you're not Gen Z, you're, like, still kind of lumped in.
100%.
Yeah. But, yeah, so she is a little bit older, and that's fun because you have more of your 20s to talk about.
So fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny that I'm just a couple years away from being done with my 20s, but it feels like I'm new to my 20s in that I still feel like such a beginner in life, you know? Like, oh my gosh, I'm just excited for my 40s. I think it's going to be the glory years.
Laura Lee said the exact same
Really?
thing. Yes.
I love Laura Lee.
I know. And y'all are like the same age. But yeah, I totally agree. But that's why I made this podcast because I'm like, enjoy it. Enjoy your 20s.
Yeah. The messy middle, I love that you say that.
Yes,
so true.
The middle's so messy. Okay, Lucy, I would love if you would tell us the story of your 20s.
Yes. Okay, so I went to Texas Christian University, which is where Julia and I met.
Yes.
So fun fact about how Julia and I met, because if you're watching on YouTube right now, you will notice that we look
something.
Yeah, you will notice that we look very similar. We met because I was working in the theater department in the scene shop, like building sets and stuff for our shows. And Julia's dad is a painter. He does so many different kinds of painting, but he was painting for some of our sets, and he resembles my dad a lot. He's younger than my dad, but he looks like him a lot. And I'd always kind of clocked that, but didn't say anything about it. One day he came up to me, he was like, "You remind me so much of my daughter. You look like her." And I was like, "That's so funny. You look like my dad." Like, I was like, clearly the genetics.
I know, yeah.
Yes, are working. So he was like, "Would love for you to meet her. She's still in high school. She wants to maybe pursue musical theater and go to TCU."
Yeah.
So we ended up connecting when she visited one day, and we did look so similar, and really honestly connected just because of we connected because of that funny way, but then our friendship continued on for so many years after that. And I'm so thankful, but I'm glad for that random little coincidence with your dad in the scene shop. We wouldn't have been friends without your dad.
I know. And I think most things about my life would be so different if I hadn't been your friend, really.
You're so sweet.
Yeah.
You're so sweet. Anyway, made that about you.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. And so I went to TCU, and I went there, and my husband, Chandler, he also went to TCU for musical theater. He was a year below me. We were dating once I was a senior and he was a junior, so he's a big part of my 20s as well. I graduated in 2018 from TCU, and I moved to New York for musical theater when I was 21, or I just turned 22. And I was just planning on pursuing it the normal way people do, getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. for these early morning open calls. Chandler was still in college, a year behind me, and he ended up moving to New York in 2019. We both kind of we'd been dating 3 or so years at that point and knew that we wanted to end up getting married. So he kind of came out to New York. He was wanting to pursue TV film at the time, but he moved out to New York for that purpose of us, taking the next step and getting married and everything. So for the whole first year and a half that I was here, starting in 2018, I was auditioning. I did a few regional shows, one in Chicago, one in Nashville. And then COVID happened in 2020. I would say, we'll get into this a little bit later.
Yeah.
I was so at the beginning stages of career. Like TCU is a great musical theater school, but it doesn't have the connections that some theater schools do, or that the name on the resume does. So I really was just like working from the beginning. So when COVID happened, I felt in my heart and realized that I was like low-key excited for a break because I was so burnt out. I was probably waking up like many, many days of the week at like 4 or 5 a.m. signing up, not getting seen a majority of those times. So when COVID happened, I noticed in my heart that I was relieved in a sense to just like have a moment to collect my thoughts and be like, what am I doing? Is it worth it? It felt like I was climbing Mount Everest, if the top of Mount Everest is being on Broadway, let's just say. And I was 2,000 feet in, and that was a whole lot of work to have already been done. But to see how far it would be, to not know my capability. Could I even do that? Did I have the potential to do it? And I was just kind of wrestling with all these questions, like going into COVID. So when COVID happened, it was also right around the time that Chandler and I had been talking about wanting to get married. And so truly all my focus like was on that, as well as just like trying to still cultivate community when everything was virtual. We were with his family at the time in Oklahoma. And so anyway, we got married during COVID, pretty much took a break while the rest of the world took a break from theater and the arts and creativity, anything that was in person. From 2020 to like the end of 2021. So we were out in California. We got married out in California.
Yeah, because you guys moved.
Yes. So yeah, let me back up.
Fall 2020, right?
So we left right when COVID hit and moved to Oklahoma for just a few months. And then we moved out to California and got married in California in the fall of 2020.
Okay.
And so then we were out in California for almost 2 years, but for that first year of it, it was just, we got 9-to-5 jobs. We felt like so relaxed because we had 9-to-5 jobs.
Yeah.
And we were talking to some friends last night about this. We were just like, having a 9-to-5 is so relaxing when you are used to piecing together like 4 part-time minimum wage jobs to try to be able to audition. And so we felt like we were on a honeymoon, like working our 9-to-5 jobs. We loved it so much. And it really was a really good year for us, having our first year of marriage, to have so much time together. And just love how the Lord used that year in our marriage. It was so connecting. But starting in the summer of 2021, both Chandler and I started to feel just like an angst, I think, about these creative dreams that we had put on pause. Chandler, I think partially because of the year he graduated, which was such a tough year to graduate, to have like only a few months.
2019.
Yeah, only a few months of pursuing it. Really hard to have anyone get traction from that. And then it kind of was like, okay, how much does he want this? And he and I had very different reactions to like COVID happening. So he ended up just being like, I don't know if this is what I want to do right now, but this dream that he had had since he was a kid to have a YouTube channel started coming like more into his heart at that time. He's so creative. He has a fantastic eye for videography and photography, as well as he's just excellent at editing. There's just those things where people are naturally really good at it.
Yeah, he's so good.
And he's just really, like, for as new as he was at it, really good at that. He had a YouTube channel when he was in middle school, and so
did I.
Yeah, exactly. And so he had always kind of had that dream in his heart, but it really like came back to life, I think, for him during 2021. So we started a YouTube channel around that time. I'll come back to that. And then around that same time, both of us just started having so much angst about getting back to New York. We just felt like the best way to describe it is just like a groaning in our souls for like, this is like not right for us to be in California right now, of just well, first of all, we were in Orange County, and so we were like, we're not retired, and so it's just not the right place, right time. So we ended up taking a trip out to New York in the fall of 2021 to just go visit, see our friends that were back here, pray about it, and like when we got back to New York, we were like, this is where we need to be. I think realistically for like my dreams for theater, there's really nowhere else you can be. And that dream was so not dead in my heart. And for Chandler, he loved New York and felt like he had only had a split moment of it. So he wanted to get back too. Anyway, so we moved back to New York March 2022. So a full 2 years after we had left. So we've been back for over 2 years now. And when we got back, I feel like my soul had been refreshed by my 9-to-5 job, and I had gained so much perspective for how important it is to have sustainability in your life to be able to pursue a creative career. And that looks like a lot of things. And anyone who's a good friend of mine will like just be like, Lucy, you talk about this all the time, but like there's a bunch of different facets in our life, but I think particularly relationally and financially, setting yourself up really well to be able to pursue, like being intentional about those areas of your life so that you have some like solid foundations in those areas so that you can have the freedom of brain space for your creativity. Because for me, I noticed that like when everything else felt out of control, my least creative stuff was happening. I was so perfectionistic in my art. I was perfectionistic about my performing and things like that. But there was actual space for creativity flow when like I had a solid community and I had good boundaries of when I was done working. I think that one of the biggest things for me that I learned from having a 9-to-5 job was just like how much joy I had creating after the workday was over, because I felt purposeful in my like day-to-day career. Like I was like, I like what I do, and it satisfies this like helpful part of my brain that I'm contributing to an organization and being helpful in this way, and then I have space to create artistically. I think that my soul was dying a little bit trying to piece together so many part-time jobs and just like make do. So that's when I got back in 2022. I went full-time as an executive assistant, and that's still what I do with the same organization. You are actually an executive assistant too part-time, which is fun.
Yeah, I'm in that transition into the sustainable life so you can have a creative. I'm like, tell me everything because that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Yes. And then I was auditioning. Then I felt like I had space to audition as well. Since I work fully remotely as an executive assistant, I was like, this is just so important to be able to be set up for success. So, so that's what I did. And so for the past 2 years, I've been auditioning in New York. In the fall of 2022, I was able to do an off-Broadway show, which was such a dream. And since then, there's just been like little blessings along the way, and gotten to do a few other shows. But I feel like so differently than I would have said in 2020. I have like the long haul of energy in front of me for this, because all of those other like rocks in my life are like solid. And it was important for those to get there first.
Wait, that's really cool. Can you actually tell us more about that? Like your rocks in your life, relationships, job. Like what else? Or tell us more.
Yeah, I think it's really important for me personally to have a lot of community that is not in the industry that I'm in, because I love talking about the industry I'm in. I love talking about theater, but it's so good for me to talk with other people who, I think that that's what I loved about TCU so much. Is majority of my friends had fully different career paths and majors and things like that. And it really helped me to be a more well-rounded human being, because I was able to gain more perspective of like how people do their day-to-day lives. And it really is so easy. When you have tunnel vision for this dream career, it can be so all-consuming, and it's really easy to forget and gain perspective. I think it's just so important to be able to retain that perspective of like the greater scale of life, that we are more than our careers and what we do. So having friends in different career paths, it sounds so simple, but like really being in deep intentional community. So the majority of my conversations were surrounding just like, you know, how people view the world, or like just these deeper and more exciting conversations than just like how, if we feel like we're going to book the next job, because I love talking about those things, and I know that about myself. And so those little pockets of friendships I do have in the industry are like so sweet to be able to talk about those things, but they don't have to all consume me. It's easy for that to be the case. So I would say just relationally, having people in all different industries has been really helpful for me, as well as just like having, for Chandler and I, having couples friends, and then also having like solid girlfriends and different groups. And that's just been awesome. So I think for us, those have been really, really important relationships to have. And then, I would say career-wise, just on a practical note, like finding a job that is remote is my best advice to any creative. Like if you can find something remotely that you can do well, that kind of like satisfies a little bit about that itch to like contribute to society. Like for me, like I know I'm being helpful as an executive assistant. Like I know I'm furthering this organization's work and like contributing, and then it doesn't feel like every job I do is just unto money. Like a lot of the part-time jobs I was piecing together were literally just so I can make a little bit of money so I could pursue theater. And that was furthering this narrative in my mind that everything was all consuming around theater. So it was helpful to have just like multiple facets of my life. And then just on a practical note, like being able to go to auditions physically while you like work your remote job is a blessing.
Because a lot of auditioning is waiting.
A lot of auditioning is waiting, And for me, it's like even if I wait all day for 8 hours, I still just had my 8-hour work day at a different location, and it's okay.
Instead of having to take off the day to do that.
Exactly. And that is, I mean, I acknowledge like how lucky and privileged I am in that, but I think that 2020 opened up a big window of possibilities for these remote jobs. And so really taking advantage of that. I know a lot of my actor friends have done that. And then also too, I just think like it is good we don't know what this industry is going to look like again. And having some of these harder skills if you ever do have to pivot in your career is like really helpful, because I was realizing in 2020, I was like, I don't have a resume of anything except like theater shows, you know? Like I had worked jobs, but they were all entry level jobs that weren't building upon anything. And so like really like wanting to diversify your skills, I think it's just helpful as a genuine human skill as creatives. And I'm also speaking to people who are like at the beginning stages of a creative career, right? Like if you can make all your income on a creative career, then that's the goal, of course, right? But the people who are gig to gig, which is a lot of us, then this has been really helpful.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's so interesting and helpful to hear, because like this week's episode, the week we're recording this, was Paolo, and like he's a photographer, and he was talking about like all the different things that he's done career-wise that like led to like this passion for this, and like, you know, working in a cafe led him to really love the hospitality industry, and now he's a full-time creative in the hospitality industry. You know, like it's just like really cool to think about that.
Exactly. 100%. And what I've really like learned from, I was always a little bit like this, but as an executive assistant, it's all task-based, organization-based, but so much of what I feel like has like made my journey in theater all the better in the past few years has been those skills I've learned as an EA, is like my organization, my like strategic thinking through different things, and particularly with a lot of the industry being out of our control, like figuring out, okay, what can I control? Where do I put my time? What's beneficial? What's strategic? And what's efficient? And like that has saved me in a lot of ways from like just wasted time and things like that. So like, these skills cross over for sure. And then, so I would say like relationships, career, and for me, like faith is just, it's a non-negotiable. I think that I always had a vision that like the Lord had gifted me with these gifts to use within theater, right? Like I always felt like God was calling me to theater.
Yeah.
But what does that even mean? Does that just mean, oh, he wants me to book a lot of shows so that I can be a light to these communities? Like, I think that can creep into prosperity gospel language in a dangerous way. Like, I don't necessarily think it's just that favor is the only thing that we pray for, or like open doors with theater. I think, yes, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But like I needed to have a more like robust theology for what God in the theater industry looked like than just like me having a successful career in theater.
Yes.
So like, what does it look like for God to be in the process of my theater dreams? What does it look like to like co-create with God in like ways that I'm passionate about? And one of the scriptures that like has come to mind when I was preparing for this is Psalm 23:3, and it says, he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And I think that for me, the paths of righteousness is the process, right? And like I just, every road he's led me down within theater, whether it's been a callback process or whether it's been like a working through of my anxiety in this area of a skill set or whatever it is, it's like it's for his glory on the earth. It's for a testimony that like he can do that in someone else. But like these paths of righteousness aren't just like the end goal, the end product.
Right.
I think that is the other core thing that you need is you need a greater vision for, in order to not burn out, you need a greater vision for why you're doing what you're doing besides the end goal of booking the job or getting to the top of your industry. And because like willpower can only get you so far, and your passion can only get you so far until you just burn out. But if you really have a greater vision for the process along the way, it's helpful.
No, that's so good. And it's cool. Like, I just admire your perspective so much because, like, you've been my friend since before I even went to college for musical theater, but I've just always seen this in you, and it's really cool to see it grow over the years. But, yeah, this idea that, like, it's not just about getting the show, but it's about the process. And as you're talking, it made me think of, like, a parent with a toddler, right? They're not just like, well, when are you going to walk? Like, when are you going to be able to write or draw? Or, like, I spend a lot of time with toddlers, so I think about this. But, like, that is what, for those listening who may or may not have experienced something similar to this, like, that is what a relationship with God looks like. It's, like, just someone who is loving you and with you and leading you along the way, not just someone who's gonna like expect you to be perfect, and not just someone who's gonna drop things in your lap that are huge. Like, it's a huge whole process, and it's like the same thing, people say, what's that quote? It's like, not the destination, it's about the journey, not the destination. But like with a friend too, it's like your friendships matter because of the time you spend together, not just like the thing that friend can do for you or the friend thing that you accomplish. And that's like how it is with God.
Totally. I 100% agree.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah. And so having those like handlebars so that you can, I think it's all for the sake of like having capacity in your mind to stay creative and not just burning out. My goal with my life is to always be able to have mental capacity to stay creative, even if that only looks like a little bit per week. If I can tell that I'm in a season where it's like depleted, and I really am just going to be honing in on my full-time job or my community, you know what I mean? But there's still going to be that passion and that vision for creativity, and that I wouldn't fully burn out. It's easy to get black and white with creative ventures and feel like if you don't make it in a certain amount of time, then it's not worth it. I'm sure that you wrestle with that a lot. But it's hard when you have a lot of different creative visions, like to know which roads to go down. And I think that that's a lot of how our world talks about it. It's just like, give it this long and we'll see if it works out.
And you're like,
and honestly, that's probably okay advice for for certain things if you need to, but if you have a greater vision for what you're doing and you're like, no, this is like part of what I want my life to be about, like then you need to set yourself up for success and get all these other ducks in a row so that you can have the capacity to continue to dream when life is up and down. If that makes sense.
So good. It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about your YouTube channel.
Yes.
It's Chandler. And you said you started it like a year into marriage-ish.
Yes.
So what is that like? Both being creative, pursuing these big things while being married and still sort of newly married.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you're in your first 5 years.
Yeah. Exactly. We've been married like 3.5 years.
Okay. So tell us about that.
Yes. So we started our YouTube channel within our first year of marriage. And you know, there are a lot of really great couples channels out there and probably some not so great ones as well, truthfully. But we didn't, and you know, this is forever our journey of like finding out what our niche is. But we didn't want to be like an advice channel. Where we were like sitting down and being like, here's our wisdom.
Our marriage advice from like 9 months.
No, yes, exactly. Or just like, you know, like here's how to like have a godly marriage or things like that. There is a value and a place for that, but it just never felt like that was like where we wanted to speak into. We're also just not that serious at the end of the day that we just kind of wanted to have a little more fun than that.
Yeah.
So so we created our channel to genuinely just be a place for like wholesome entertainment that was also not at the expense of our marriage. I think a lot of like couples channels do like prank stuff that really like will kind of fake humiliate the other person, or like pretending that I like kept the secret from my wife or whatever, like all this kind of content. So we were just like, what does it look like to just have like wholesome entertainment, to kind of just have a lifestyle vlog style channel where people could just see a glimpse into what like mundane but healthy marriage looks like. And people who just enjoy each other. Like we're just like a lot of people just want to see people that enjoy each other. That's what I love watching. I love watching friends or couples, you know, just like genuinely enjoy one another's company, and it inspires me to like see how they interact and what they do well, and like how like to watch people appreciate one another is really so sweet. Beautiful. And so we were like, we would love to just create content like that was the goal. And so, you know, we've dabbled around in like many different styles of doing that. Overall, though, it's like vlog style for the most part, mostly about our life in New York. And when it started to, you know, we've had slow growth. So the theme for this episode right here today, folks, is slow growth in journeys of creative ventures. Is like never a like crazy favor moment. It's always just like slow growth. But we've had a few moments where like there've been like quote unquote viral videos. And oh my gosh, we can talk about that a little bit if you want. But some of the things that did well was like when we moved to New York, people love like hearing about like move-in journeys and like apartment searching and things like that. My husband and I, Chandler and I, live in 380 square feet. So we have a small studio apartment. You've been there. But I think that like it is fascinating to people, particularly in the Midwest is our audience. People who are just like, how do you live in such a tiny space? Also for an arm and a leg. Why did you do that? And like some is like a critical why, and some is a genuinely curious why. Like what why would you choose that life when you could get triple the space in a 3-bedroom home here? And so I think a lot of that kind of stuff did well, which was fun for us. And then pretty quickly through that we were subjected to like some pretty harsh criticism because of like, because a lot of those decisions people don't agree with, but then they jump from not agreeing with your decision to like a criticism of character, obviously, and with a bunch of different kinds of content. And so it really strengthened Chandler and I's like grew thicker skin, I think. And so social media comments, I don't think bother us too much. We try not to read them very much.
Yeah.
And I would say like it's an interesting balance for us. We were talking about it this week. It's an interesting balance for us. We had this video go viral. We did this series called Stay at Home Husband series, and we had 3 videos in it because when I booked my off-Broadway show, I was working that, and then I was also working my full-time job, so I was working 2 full-time jobs. And Chandler does some like social media and marketing for people on the side, as well as our YouTube channel, but he was doing like all the household stuff, so he was being the stay-at-home husband and then working a little bit from home. And so we made this series, and you know, we knew, like, we were telling the truth and that's what he was doing, but it's also, like, not the full truth, right?
Right.
Well, it's true, but also, like...
Not that he doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we know that, like, the hook or the way that we phrased it is clickbaity, right? And that's intentional because it's just, like, shock factor, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been interesting to, like... you know, do those kinds of things where you like choose to do that for the views and like figuring out like what our boundaries are around that. Because those are the videos where we've gotten like the most criticism because people are like, why? Understandably, why is your wife working 2 jobs and you're not working?
Yeah.
And we're like, well, that's not the full story. But so anyway, that's been part of like our YouTube journey. Is just like handling criticism, figuring out what like our boundaries are with YouTube. So those kinds of things grew our audience a lot though. That series in particular, and then the like New York apartment stuff really grew our audience a lot. And then there was a lull for about a year. So all of last year, faithfully, Chandler was working hard, posting for us, and truly no growth and like no traction, and that was really, really hard. Because like you're told if you're consistent, then like it, you know, YouTube really favors that. But it was just tough, and I think that was really a lot of Chandler's shaping of his like what I just talked about. Like my journey with theater was his last year with like what does faithfulness look like when things aren't happening quickly or going well, and like what does it mean to like plant deep roots. And he just like his skills improved so much. So anyway, then this year we've had like some cool opportunities that have kind of grown our audience a little bit, and so I think we're in a really sweet spot right now where we have like a lot of vision and excitement for our channel. So that's been fun. And yeah, it's just felt like our small but like engaged audience like enjoys it, and that's just what is exciting. So the dream really would be for us to be full-time YouTubers, and then for me to do theater. That would be like dream end goal for sure. But that may take years, and our goal is to like stay healthy mentally in the meantime. And
that's so good. I think that's just so good to hear and to talk about, because again, it's like if you're called to something, if you feel like you love doing something, it doesn't have to be an overnight success. And I was actually talking with Katie, my roommate, yesterday about this.
She and I talked about this actually a lot.
Because she is like a viral YouTuber, and she did that for
like an overnight success. She essentially like she went viral super quickly.
And I think, you know, I was talking with her about that because even with like producing a podcast, you know, it's doing well, and again, small engaged audience, and it's so fun, but it's not like viral. I'm like, okay, Julia, you've been doing this for 3 months, so that's fine. But I think I was just like, I feel like, and this has come up on the podcast before, but I feel like our generation has a really skewed view of what like success looks like, of what being good at something looks like. Because even though a lot of our friends might be, you know, working normal jobs in business or, you know, medicine or anything like that, like still our whole generation has seen people become famous overnight. For doing some things really hard, some random things, like, you know, like, and we just have seen all of it so close to us. You know, there
Yeah.
were always overnight successes, but there's a lot more of them now.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I feel like we
That's so
think
true.
sometimes that like we're totally failing, or maybe I think too as Christians we can think like, well, if God's leading me in this direction,
Yeah.
then it must be like instant favor.
100%.
God called me to this. I'm on Broadway tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's just not always
No.
how it is. Going back to what you were saying before.
No. I mean, like, I love what you said. It's so true. It's just we see so many more now,
Mm-hmm.
and it really does skew us. And yes, it's so true that like it can shake our faith, because it can be like, well, if God's calling me to this, then he must have to put favor on it. And it's just like a dicey theology to get into.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
like God's job isn't to make you famous, you know? But
No.
at the same time, like, he loves his kids, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like holding in tension, like he's still like, scripture says he wants good things for us.
Yeah.
And so how do we have a healthy, well-rounded view of like the kindness of God and the nature of God? And it is just so important to like see those little seeds of those dangerous thought processes to go down and like get them out.
Yeah.
And so I love what you just said. I think that that's really true.
That's so good. And just like what we were talking about before of like, it's like a parent or a friend who's with you. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's what God really promises in scripture, is that his Holy
Exactly.
Spirit is with us. He doesn't promise success actually at all.
Yeah.
And different people have had different experiences in maybe the churches they've grown up or what they've grown up hearing. But yeah, God doesn't promise that in scripture. If you
Yeah.
actually go look, like, his goodness and mercy following you
Yes.
is what he promises.
Yes.
His presence is what he promises.
Yes.
Him being there whenever you ask
Yeah.
is what he promises. You getting the American dream,
Mm-hmm.
overnight success,
Yeah.
is not what he
Yeah.
promises. But the fact, and I feel like I've been wrestling with this too, of like, is that really my greatest treasure? That God would care to have his presence dwell within me, and
Yes.
that God would care to call me a friend. Because according to him, and I believe that he designed the world, like, he says that that is the greatest thing we can
Yes.
aspire to,
Yes.
or I mean, not achieve, because it's a gift, but just the greatest thing we can have, you know?
Yes.
And so, yeah, I feel like that's something to wrestle with. Like, oh, do I believe that?
Yeah.
Because if it's true, it's really good news.
Yeah.
That I can just be satisfied.
Yeah.
And I can still work hard,
Yeah.
but I don't have to, like, be striving for, like, these goals of my career that may or may not happen.
100%.
I can do it and enjoy the process and be open.
Yeah. I want to keep talking about this, because I
Yeah.
think this is so, it is so good, because it's like he's also the one who put the dreams in our heart.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not going to put a dream in our heart and then withhold all good things. So it's the tension of that.
Yeah.
Like he really does care about our dreams, and like, but at the same time, like it says, like Psalm 16 says that the Lord is my chosen portion and my lot, or chosen portion in my cup, you hold my lot. And it also says that you are my Lord, I have no good apart from you. And it's like, I think that that's really what it gets down to, is like, am I desiring to have good apart from him a bit? Would I be okay with this success with or without him? Because if so, take it away.
Yeah.
Get out any part of my heart that would be content with like you not going beside me in this, but like me achieving any of it. And I think that that's what it comes down to for me. Yeah, I don't know. I think a theology of the Lord caring about our dreams and wanting to bring breakthrough, but at the same time his deepest desire being with us is important.
Yes.
Is
yes.
really
It's
important to
both.
like really struggle and wrestle with, you know? So I love that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's just good. And yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this, because I'm like, I've had these conversations with you for years, but I feel like other people may be wrestling with this and they don't have a friend who is in their same field or something. So, okay, well, what have you learned about persistence through your 20s?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. Okay, I think with persistence, I think that for me, having community who is in or outside the industry that pray with you consistently for your creative dreams has been probably one of the biggest things for me. We have these two friends, their names are Johnny and Julia, you know them as well. And we have like prayed for each other more than I think like anyone in our own lives. Like we consistently and like within all of our hearts all have had all these different dreams and like unmet expectations and hard job searches and like just a lot of stuff over the course of the last several years. And I think just like consistently having people praying with you and asking the Lord for like vision for you and sharing scripture with you has been really, really helpful for persistence, just on like a practical note. And like there's this great book by Mark Batterson, and it's like it's from The Circle Maker, if you know that book.
Okay, I never read it.
It's like a 40-day, it's like the 40-day prayer book after I think it's called Draw the Circle. It's a 40-day prayer devotional. I actually did it for the first time with Laura Lee and a few other girls back in 2022. But we did it as like the two of us couples a couple times when we were praying through some really big breakthrough needs we had, and all four of us had like what felt like impossible situations have breakthrough in them through like genuinely intentional prayer. And I think that persistence looks like really admitting when you're weak and doing that in community faithfully and consistently, because like I know that my heart is like struggling sometimes when I'm like trying to have time with the Lord in the morning and trying to like process my dreams, and like I can't hear for myself pretty clearly sometimes. I feel like fuzzy and muddy. So I would say that that's a big part of persistence, is having those people just like to hold your arms up for you, and just to like keep going.
And to know when things are hard and not walk alone in that.
Exactly. So I would say that's a big piece of persistence. And I think it really goes back to what we said before, is like as much as you can create healthy habits for yourself of a sustainable life. Like be honest with yourself and be like, okay, like am I running at a sustainable speed? Like could I do this a year from now? And be honest with yourself. Take an inventory of your schedule and just be like, could I do this a year from now? Or do I just have a lot of excitement right now about what I'm pursuing or what I'm doing, or this, I just launched the podcast, so I have a lot of adrenaline.
Right.
But could I do this at this speed next year? If not, I don't need to stop everything right away, but like, what can I put in place to help me? And so I think just like being honest with ourselves and our limits, like I've really come to grips with my limits, and that's really helpful because I'm a person who signs up for way too much, and I know you are too.
No, that's so good.
Yeah, just being honest with your limits, because it was really easy then to crash and then want to just dissociate and go into major enjoy life mode, don't think about it, honestly, avoidance. And like no, like no. Like you could just be present in the process. And I think that that's a big thing for persistence as well.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think what I'm hearing too is that you're building a life you enjoy now.
That's exactly what, yes.
Because I see this with friends in business and friends. It's not just an artist thing. Like, it's like you think that once you reach a place where you're, what's it called? Like, if for really rich people, it would be like you're living off of passive income where you don't have to work,
wouldn't even think about that phrase.
Or like you can be full time in your creative pursuit or whatever, and thinking like, well, once I get to that, then I'll have made it. And I think that even I've heard like the phrase recently from multiple people, like, it's just Broadway.
Yeah.
It's just Broadway.
Yeah.
Or it's just $1 million. Yeah. Or it's like whatever that is for you, and like we just can't live like that because we're going to miss out
Yeah.
on a lot. And like nothing's
Yeah.
promised,
Yeah.
you know? So I feel like I see that in you. Like, I feel like you really
Thanks.
enjoy your life right now, right?
Yes, I love it. I'm really thankful. And I love that you said that. I was talking to a good friend in the industry about, and she's had like some major success. But she was even like saying to me, she was just like, it's so easy to get into that mindset of like, once I book this like TV regular role, then I'll like go out and try to make some new friends because like my current workplace, like I don't have a ton of friends in my workplace or whatever it is, you know, like once I do that, then I won't have to work 60 hours a week and I'll have time, you know? And I'm like, that totally makes sense. And like, we've all done that with something. It's really easy, but I'm like, no, community. And she totally agrees with this. Like, community is like a deep need, need. Yeah. That actually needs to be prioritized, unfortunately.
Over work, honestly. Or over,
Yeah, and I think sometimes when we neglect those needs, it really, really adds up.
Yeah, it really does.
So yeah, creating a life you enjoy now. Well said.
That's good. Okay, so if you're not putting your hope in someday your career circumstances changing and all your dreams come true, what does give you hope?
Jesus gives me hope. He gives me perspective. I feel like that's what he's been doing a lot in the last year, particularly. Like, I feel like every time I sense overwhelm or anxiety, because I've had a lot of anxiety in this last year, like random, mostly like physical anxiety, which has been like new for me and been walking through that. I just ask him to give me like a perspective of the world.
Wow.
Like literally aerial view, like zoom me out. And you know what's funny is there is this TikTok trend of that where someone's just like, you know, it's like a day-to-day problem and then it's like zooms out to like a pan of the earth. But
cool.
I genuinely and it's like, it's kind of a running joke of like, calm down. But I'm like, totally, like 100%. And I do feel like that is the vision the Lord continues to give me, is like a zoomed out vision of my life. And like, when I look back on my life, like, what do I want it to be marked by? What do I want? Like, because truly, I think when I look at the end of my life, I want to just be remembered as someone who like loved the Lord and loved people well. Like, genuinely, that's all I care about. And like the currents, and I do acknowledge that like not everyone thinks that way. A lot of people would be like, I hope to leave a legacy of this achievement.
Which is a good thing too.
Totally. And so that's just like how my brain works, is I just ask the Lord to re-give me that perspective of like end of my life, like what I really value.
Yeah.
And it makes the worries so much smaller, and that's really genuinely what I put my hope in. I know that that's just how my brain works though. So other people, if that's not how your brain works, it's okay. You want to leave a legacy. I totally get that.
No, but that's good.
You know?
No, but that's really good, Lucy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thanks.
Well, our last question.
Yes.
Is what are you looking forward to? We've had a reflective time.
Yes.
But looking ahead.
Okay, so this summer I'm doing a show and I'm really excited about it. So I'm really excited for the show I'm doing this summer. I don't know if I can, they haven't announced
probably
yet
better
what
not.
it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I will be doing that this summer, and Chandler's going to get to come for a good chunk of the summer and visit. So I'm so excited about that. It's very dancey, and I'm definitely a singer-actor first before dancer, but I've just been in this era of really loving dance lately, and I'm so excited about that. I'm really excited to like improve, but also like maybe be the worst at some things and like continue to be a learner, to try to like practice what I preach of like not being perfectionistic and like learning new things at 27 and asking questions. And I'm just really excited for that this summer. I'm just excited for the summer in general. And the other thing I'm excited for is I just love my husband so much, and I just feel like we've just been having such a sweet season of marriage, and so I'm just excited about like the memories we're making right now. And so it's just been really fun.
Yay.
So yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, Lucy, thank you so much
Yes.
for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your story,
Thanks,
your
Jules.
heart, your wisdom.
Thanks.
This was
Aw.
such a joy.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Thanks so much for listening, friends. Be sure to subscribe to Tears and Joy in Your 20s wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media and send this episode to a friend. We'll see you back here next Thursday.